Hello listeners, it's time to talk Leeds Rhinos as we tour the clubs this off-season. We get our old friend from Down Under, Rich Wilkinson, on to recap an up and down again 2018 for the Rhinos. Peter Smith completes his SLP hat-trick, joining us on the phone to run through the off-season headlines. Just a note, we recorded with Peter just before James Donaldson started training with the Rhinos, so we don't cover that interesting storyline. Rich is then back to look ahead to the 2019 season. He gives us the lowdown on the NRL imports, and maybe also he comes along to fire some shots as well. I hope you enjoy this one. So it's Leeds Rhinos' turn to get the SLP off-season treatment, and I'm absolutely delighted that joining us on the line from Down Under is Leeds superfan Rich Wilkinson. Welcome back to SLP, Rich.
Cheers, Mark.
As you'll have been following along, we're going to go through what was predicted before the season first, and then run through some of the fan views, and then the stage will be yours, Rich. So,
thanks.
I picked Leeds to finish about mid-table in the league, but have a good cup run. It turned out that they performed poorly in the league, ended up finishing second in the qualifiers, but did have a good cup run, got to the semi-finals when they were then outclassed by Warrington Wolves in Bolton. You weren't the only Leeds fan to want to contribute when we did the end of season review stuff, Rich, so some of these have entertained me. Daniel Hopwood summed it up really concisely. Poor start and middle, and ended totally deflated. Dr. Bob Phillips said, "The Rhinos' inaugural season has been a dream. Such enthusiasm and skill and dogged determination. Hopefully the men's team will match them next year."
Yes.
Dom Hodgson said, "Who gives a fuck? By the time this is read out, I'll be heading to Vegas." Well, Dom didn't know that maybe we were changing plans a little bit this off-season, so he's been to Vegas, he's been to Orlando, he's been all over the show until this has been read out, but there you go. Paul Wilson at PMW777 said, "Leeds had the vision, structure and delivery in 2018, but only when it came to the ground reconstruction. On the pitch, nothing to see but shit. Real shit." And then James Schofield was quite polite in his below average, but the slappy head face emoji that he added to that maybe gave away his true feelings. So I suppose, I mean, what are your feelings on 2018 as a Leeds Rhinos fan?
Okay, so look, it's easy to kind of lump it all in together, and obviously I've listened to other people's contributions so far in their season, and there are a lot of people going, "Oh, well, we beat Leeds, but Leeds were shit." It's like, if you kind of go back and look over the step-by-step of the season, we didn't start off so bad.
No, exactly. 4 wins from the opening 5 games.
That's it, and we'll get to some of the points, that maybe the clutch points in the season. But there's no doubt that the back end, the final third of the season was abysmal, and then going into the playoffs was shocking. But it started off all right. I've got to be honest, I saw some really promising signs, and the start wasn't as bad as the end. And I think we'll focus at the end when we get to that bit. But if we start at the very beginning, we started at Wyre away with a good win. Ryan Hall goes 60 metres, throwing off people. He carried on his World Cup form, and at the start, it didn't look like that much of a disaster, if I'm really honest.
No, you're right. I think everyone was positively surprised with how well Richie Myler was settling into the side, how well the forward pack was going, and that sort of stuff. I think people were positively surprised after a big shuffle around a game with some of the old heroes departing, just as happened after the 2015 grand final win. So the loss, though, in that first 5 games was to Widnes. So
and right. So let's and obviously, Mark, it's really hard when you come on these things to review the season and without looking back through the fixtures, looking through the wins and losses, to really get a grip on where the season went. 'Cause it's so easy to forget so quickly and kind of get a snapshot of the season in your mind. But Widnes have always been a bogey team for Leeds at Widnes. And when you run it all through your mind and you get to the end of the season, that 2 points at Widnes, which was pretty much the first game after the World Club Challenge, essentially left us short again. You know, left us waiting on other people's results that just didn't go our way. And Widnes are our bogey team at their ground. They get us all the time. And we were in that game to the last few minutes. We could simply not get over the line, and they just took it away from us.
And it also, more positively, included because I'm not letting you get away with that. It was Widnes, but more positively, you did beat.
Well, no, it was not.
You did beat St Helens.
But let's just take a flip back to that, and I know you got to move it along quickly, but that's the point, isn't it? It's like it was Widnes. It was Widnes. After all was said and done, they're the team who just could not scrape together a victory, and they took something away from us in the early part of the season. That was straight after the World Club Challenge, and they did us essentially. But yeah, look, moving on, we had some really good wins. We beat Hull at home, which was a scrapey win, but we got it done. And then we went to Saints, and we were the better team on the day.
Definitely,
you know what I mean? And we turned them over.
Yeah. Then there was the narrow loss at Cass where you were just absolutely just hammered in the first half, but nearly came back into that. There was a bit of a strange game against Huddersfield with a draw, and then sort of we started to see maybe some cracks start to appear after that
100%.
Sort of short run.
So my synopsis is exactly like yours, mate. So I've made exactly the same points when I've kind of gone back and looked through the season. You made a really good point again about Cass against Leeds at Ellen Road. We were so close, but so far away. We literally had a chance to win the game at the end of the game, and the game ended on Mikolaj Lejski getting penalised for playing the ball east-west. And essentially that summed up that game. You know what I mean? We come so far, and then a lad who's doing so well played the ball from sideline to sideline, and we got penalised. And we had I think we had one or two players to maybe just throw up a Hail Mary or whatever, and it went wrong. And you're right, that draw against Huddersfield, my notes exactly here are like, that was a turning point in the season. We picked up a couple of good wins after that, but the cracks were starting to show. We basically went on, I think we beat Salford really convincingly. We nilled them at home. But it was one of the most dour games going.
Yeah,
and then we
definitely.
beat Wakey away, but things were starting to fall apart. And then it rolls into, which you're probably going to talk about next, is that we got beat by Wigan at home 9-8 in a game that we were in front all the way, but Wigan just iced it with that amazing drop goal from Tompkins. And then we went on to have 1-point victories against Hull, Wire, Uds, then Saints. They beat us at home, I think, with a Danny Richardson drop goal. And, from there, it just, we'd spoke about Myler being really, really good for Leeds. And I think he was really good for Leeds, and he came up with so many assists and settled in really well. But we'd lost, as I spoke to you before the show, my dad's over in Australia visiting me, and we had a really good chat about the Leeds season, that we'd lost all our leaders, our genuine talismans in the dressing room, and Maguire were gone. And we were losing these 1-point victories, these clutch moments in a game to ice the game, and Myler wasn't getting it done. And I'm not going to put it at his feet, but our pack was starting to get beat week in, week out, and our clutch player won't get in the wins. And if you look at those, there's probably 4 or 5.
Player, I think is the point, isn't it, that you mentioned? You didn't have a clutch player. You had
we had no talisman.
The best halfback in the league for 70 minutes of every game almost. In terms of, he was as good as any other 7 playing for what he did creating for his team. But for the last 10 minutes, he was not. He was not that man, and the other men around him, skillful players like people like Moon and Parcell and people like that, went into
Watkins,
one-man upmanship role and didn't really play together. They tried to do it themselves because they'd stopped trusting each other, potentially.
No talisman, no genuine leader, mate. And I think we'll again, we will get to it later on, but Leeds' recruitment has been built around leadership, is my genuine opinion.
Yeah, so obviously we sort of rolled. You started to chip through some of those losses. There was eight defeats in a row. After the 7th of those defeats, after around 19 away hammering at Wigan in front of Sky's cameras, it seemed like playing Wigan when you were on a losing run was a death knell for coaches this year, because so many coaches got sacked after getting Wigan. Maybe clubs would have looked at it differently if they'd have seen Wigan would win the competition. But at that point, Leeds were on a 7-game losing run that included heavy defeat to Castleford at Magic. Crucially, there was also losses against kind of rival clubs in that race to avoid the qualifiers. Huddersfield and Catalan, you got them as they started to turn up and you were turning down. Leeds were still in the top 8 though when Brian McDermott was sacked, but they were on a downwards trajectory. So at that time, did you feel that the change was needed, that it was inevitable that you would slip into the bottom 4 with the way things were going, and something had to be done?
Yeah, it's it's really difficult, isn't it, when you're talking about Brian McDermott moving on. He's a coach who brought so much to Leeds, but always caused so much divide between fans and families. Very much, almost like a Donald Trump presidency. You know what I mean? It's split families down the middle because I live in one of them. You know what I mean? And it's a really strange scenario where.
Well, talk us through that a little bit then. Yeah, what was so divisive about? Why did he get blamed so heavily for every loss, but receive so little criticism for every win, basically?
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's like, look, my old man and some of my mates' opinion is that he's got very to little rapport with the players.
Yeah.
And he's not a coach. He's not an arm round you who's going to get you moving in the right direction kind of guy. And that's what, a lot of the Leeds fans think, you need somebody who's going to hold the dressing room together.
And you lost all the players that were doing that. So
absolutely, yeah. So that you make a really good point, mate. So my point has always been, and this is my point, and I'm happy to tell you what it is. I think McDermott is a military man. We all know that. He's a war hero. He's a war veteran. And I think my philosophy is that he's always run it like a military operation. And my gut feeling is, and this is me just paraphrasing or putting myself in the psyche of McDermott.
It's what we got you on for.
Yeah, that's right. It's like, my opinion is, he's probably said to the players over numerous years from seeing things like, as good as it gets and stuff, it's like, if you're going to be shit for Leeds because you don't like me, you probably need to fuck off. Because if you love me or not is completely irrelevant. You need to look the people in this dressing room in the eyes, and if you can't play for them, playing for me is completely fucking irrelevant. And if it's about me, then you need to go, because I'm just a man. And if you're not tough enough to get out there and play for the blokes who you're looking at in the eyes, then you're not right for Leeds. And I think that were great for long enough while we had all of these leaders in here. And I think that would buy into not that it were them against McDermott, but they were playing for each other, and that's all they ever wanted. It's when you're in the trenches, you're not fighting for your general. You're not fighting for you're fighting for the bloke who's next to you. And because he's your mate and he's the only person you've got other than your family who are
That's it. The
thousands of miles away.
And the people at home, and the people at home are kind of the people in the stands, and the bloke next to you is the man in the tackle.
That's it. And not to be too profound, but I think McDermott's like, if you're soft enough to get upset by me, then you shouldn't be at Leeds. That worked for so long, but when it goes wrong, it had gone wrong, and I don't think there were enough of there weren't enough of, as we've said, there weren't enough leadership. The reason why we're losing those tight games, the reason why the team weren't coming together, that had gone, and that's the problem at Leeds, and that's been identified, that the legacy players, that team of leaders has gone, and leaving it to Jamie Jones on his own has probably been a bridge too far.
Especially a player who's then often injured, so kind of away from the trenches as well. Yeah. So I think that's so the summary. It really is like the strong leadership style stopped working because the players weren't there who could buy into that leadership style. The leadership style wasn't fit for the group anymore. Leeds only won once more during the regular season after that sacking, so it didn't quite work out. And then that win, the only win, was at bottom club Widnes as well. Leeds were conceding an average of 30 points a game in the opening three qualifiers fixtures as well, although crucially Leeds, kind of like if we look at the NFL right now and we see like the Kansas City Chiefs and the St. Louis Rams putting up these ridiculous scores, they actually won 2 of those 3 games, even though they conceded a huge amount of points. Super League safety was all but sealed after a narrow, and some might say lucky, win over Salford in week 5 of the qualifiers. So was there any nerves at that stage with those big scorelines?
Absolutely.
And poor defensive efforts?
Absolutely. It was horrible. It was an absolute shit show. It was watching, it was like it was like a skull fight. You know what I mean? It was just people windmilling at each other and hoping that we'd come out on the right end because we were a full-time professional club. And the loss to Hull KR was no different. That was like, what was that, 38-32 or something like that? I'm guessing off the top of